everyone for registering for this webinar. We got a lot of great response from our customers and prospective customers. So we had to really go into looking at some of the questions that we wanted to address today. And we've tried to sort of capture a question sort of really encompassing some of the topics that our audience was interested in. Well, we did have a lot of questions around Dynascape as well. So what we've decided to do is just park those questions for another webinar that we will be conducting that will specifically be around some of the questions, the tips and tactics that you can learn while, of course, using Dynascape. So those questions will be answered after. But today, for today's sake, I do want to welcome our three panelists. Let me introduce them quickly before we get started on asking some of those questions. First up is Beth Edney. Beth is pretty close to Dynascape because for the folks who are customers, they probably have seen her do some of our training sessions. So Beth is based out of Toronto, but she's a certified landscape designer as well as certified floral designer. She's been in the industry for 34 plus years. So that brings a lot of great experience to the table. So Beth opened up her own design firm back in 1994. It's called Designs by the Yard. One of the amazing things that Beth does is she's the artistic director for Toronto Christmas Market. If people who are not from around here, if they do come to Toronto, they got to go see that Christmas market. It's outstanding. It's amazing. It kind of really gets you in the vibe of that Christmas spirit. So welcome, Beth. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Please. Next slide, please. Next up, I've got Chris Major. Chris has been a client of Dynascape for years. Chris is an award-winning landscape designer. He's a certified green industry professional by the Michigan Nursery and Landscape. He does specialize in landscape, exterior architecture, and garden photography. And in his free time, Chris also teaches horticulture for the Michigan State University. And I think I mentioned he is based out of Michigan as well. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining us. And last but not the least, Patrick DuChene. I think you've heard Patrick's name quite a bit as well. He's a well-known individual in the landscaping world. He's had 27 plus years of industry experience. He owns his own company, DuChene Design Solutions. He's a certified green industry professional by the Michigan Nursery and Landscape. He also specializes in a lot of other consulting for design processes, estimating, production efficiency, as you guys can read. But more importantly, Patrick also teaches for the New York Botanical Garden. He teaches Dynascape down there. So again, all of these professionals that you see are pretty well versed with Dynascape, but also have been in the industry for a long time. So I'm super excited to be really picking you guys' brain as we go through these questions. So we can just, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so we'll get started with our questions. One of the questions as we kick this off is around how do we really market to increase design clientele? I know this is an all-encompassing question, but maybe Chris, I can point that question to you. If you can maybe give us a few points that you believe are important, to really increase our, the design clientele, and also how to weed out some of the tire kickers that customers see.
Well, that's a really good question. I think that we live in a time where there's a lot of information being passed around, and there's a lot of access to information. And I think that becomes a little bit of an issue where you can get lost in that information and kind of get really lost in the weeds. So if, and I had a few notes here, and I kind of have three things to kind of like top tips to think about in terms of action. Number one, be present. Number two, communicate. And number three, be curious. So number one, expanding on that a little bit, is being present, I guess also being relevant, and making sure that what you are looking to market is something that will will make sense to your design clientele, your target clients. So so if your target market is really interested in say indoor plant design, then you're going to want to do the things that you know that are going to make sense for that market. And being present is being involved with organizations that have things to do with that. Like, for instance, I've been involved with the Michigan Nursery and Landscape Association. I've also helped with the MSU Horticulture Department. And those are just a couple of things that I do where I'm at. And depending on where someone else is in their local area or broad state or even national level, I think there are a lot of different ways that you can develop that presence and market towards your target audience. And then right alongside of that is communicate. And I think right now, because a lot of people are working remote, communication is very, very key to what we're doing. And that's I think being rewired right now as we're living in this total pandemic era, or whatever you want to call it. And we're dealing with being able to communicate in different ways. There's a lot of great methods to communicate to prospects. I think it comes back to, how do you want to best communicate in a way that's efficient for you and your business, so that it's going to make sense and be repeatable, so that there is it's something that clients can come to expect through that communication. And then finally, be curious, because I think it's really easy to get stuck in a rut and really be just Johnny one note on certain things. I do think that seeking new information, attending webinars like this, and learning from others, if there's anything that I've learned, is that I'm still learning. I don't know it all, and I'm not ever going to say that. It just is not possible to know everything. Someone somewhere will know more about something than you do. And the great thing about our day and age is that we have the ability to express that curiosity, watching YouTube videos, or being on webinars such as this again, and being involved with different organizations and staying in touch with individuals in various ways can really help maintain that curiosity and elevate all of the things that I just talked about, in increasing your ability to market to design clientele.
And Chris, I know that you also specialize in photography. I'm just curious how you kind of incorporate that into your marketing, if you will, to get those clientele that you're asking for.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's kind of two ways to look at this. We look at this through the, I guess, the lens as I'm a photographer. First and foremost, actually, I've really transitioned into doing photography and really focusing towards people in the green industry. So whether you're in architecture or design or contracting and so forth, my goal is to help come alongside those individuals and help them create images that are going to elevate their business. And that's what I've come to learn. That's like one side of it. But then we can also look at it from the design perspective of, how do I take good pictures for help marketing my designs? And I think that's where I try to take a lot of inspiration towards the type of images that I work for, that I create working for different clients of my own. And I think we have a couple of little action points here. Number one, make sure they're in focus. That's kind of an obvious one, but you'd be surprised how many really out of focus images that there are floating around websites and Instagram. The second thing is good composition, making sure that those horizon levels are flat, and making sure that your building walls are as straight as you can. That helps give a much more, it just has just a better relevance and commanding presence to the image and the composition. And then thirdly, tell a story with your images. And what I mean, a good takeaway of that is before and afters. Have really solid before pictures where maybe the site looks terrible, and then you have really, really good, even better quality images that tell the story of, this is where we took this backyard space or whatever, and really made it amazing, and to tell that story. And that is something that you then can use with talking to new clients and helping give, talking about that story of that process, and then that will encourage the clients to maybe do the same thing or even do more.
Okay, fantastic. Anybody else wants to chime in for that? Beth or Patrick?
Great points that Chris has. I love the takeaways. And I love what he talks about. It's busy out there. And so I always like to think, squint your eyes, and that's what other people see. So when you're branding yourself or you're trying to get across that information, it really has to be like in your face, and it seems really super obvious to you, but it's not when everybody's being just bombarded with everything else.
Yeah. Great, thanks so much. Let's move on to the next question, just around time tracking. Someone is asking, what program are people using, and how do you charge? Now, it's a question around by the hour or a flat fee based on the project. Maybe we can start with you, Chris, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, for a simple time tracking tool that I use is there's a free one on my phone for my iPhone. I don't know if it's available for Android or not, but I use one. It's called Time Logger. And I think that there's probably a lot of different apps out there for managing your time and logging that. And I'll just use it depending on what I'm doing, whether I'm working on, photography work, or whether I'm working on design work, and I'll log that time. I don't necessarily charge per se by the hour for most of my work, though, just to kind of, and I think this really is kind of a minefield of discussion. So to kind of be just my take on this, and there are a lot of different ways to look at it, is I look at it like, rather than charging by the hour, I'd rather charge by the project, and quoting it out that way. I already know that I know roughly how long it's going to take, and I'd rather not get stuck in the weeds of saying, well, it's going to take this many hours and this many, whatever. I already should have a good idea of that based on my experience, and then I will put that into more of an overall project budget, and that's how I would apply that.
Sounds good. Beth, do you want to add something to it?
Sure. So I actually use Dynaescape when I'm tracking my time on drawing on the computer. And like Chris, I don't really get like to get caught up in the whole hourly basis. I do estimate how long the project's going to take, and then I charge my client. I do charge commercially by the hour when I do some commercial work. So it's a combination, but I think residential clients get super scared when you say it's going to be, $150 an hour. They're like, they kind of want an idea of what it's going to cost. So it's not, they're just throwing money out there. So it's nice to put together a budget. I'm always teaching my students, always check, like be double checking how long it takes you, because you might think it's going to take you 10 hours to do this simple project. Next thing you know, it's 25 hours. And, and then you're not making as much as you think you're making. So it's always great to keep on checking where you're at with your hours.
I'd love to see what Patrick thinks as well. He's been awfully quiet today.
Well, I'm just letting everybody talk. So I went through this little mode of wanting to change how I was doing certain things, which change sometimes is good, but sometimes it's not. And I got into the weeds and chased rabbit holes of time tracking apps and project management apps. And it got to the point where I was like, I could just build this really easily in Excel and save myself $10 a month or whatever. So I was using Smartsheets, and Smartsheets is great, but for what I was doing, what my team was doing, it's really just a glorified Excel spreadsheet. And so with time tracking, it's extremely important, and it's so under executed or used by designers. They design and they're not keeping track of time, and then you don't know how much money you're making. So you need to keep track of how many hours you're doing each project. And with tasks are an important thing, so how many hours a year are you doing 3D modeling, and how many hours a year are you doing designing, and how many hours a year are you doing this and that, and tracking for revisions. Our revision time is right around 5%, which is pretty low, but I wouldn't know that unless I kept track of all these things. So Tracking's really important, but don't feel like you need to go out and spend money on an app when it's not rocket science. Like I have a sheet that's 3 tabs. One is my timesheet. I track by the 15-minute increments. It has the client name. So if it's Chris Major Landscaping, it's Chris Major Landscaping. I'm designing for the Beth Edney residence. I'm designing, or I'm 3D modeling, or I'm estimating. And then I put my date, start time, stop time. And then at the end, I have the total amount of time. So every day I can see every single job I worked on, what I did, how long it took. And then the next day I just skip a row and I start the next. Then when you go to do your billing, you should be billing like every Friday, or just set a day for billing. Don't just do it all over the place because it's not efficient. Bill on Friday. And then on that timesheet, every time you bill one of those jobs or tasks, you just turn the row green. And then that's a way for you to catch any missed billing. So you don't have a project that you worked on 3 weeks ago that there's $400 just sitting in your spreadsheet that you forgot. So it's crucial to do that. As far as time, charging for design, when I started, I was charging, in my design contracts, it would say X amount of dollars for design. So let's just say it's $50 an hour. Okay, that's great. Well, what Beth said was right. I'm fast with this software and I can pump things out pretty quick. Joe Drawer or Joe Designer might be slow and we're charging the same amount of time, but my project may end up costing $400 and his was $650 because he's 25 or 50% slower. So I just started just saying, you know what, forget the hourly rate thing. I have a number that I base my estimates on, but you just tell people it's going to cost $400 to $500 based on what we've talked about. And if you're doing designing and you're charging a fee, have a carbon copy. I probably said this last time. Have a carbon copy form, write down what you're designing, the scope of your design, what your estimated price is, and have your client sign it, you sign it, and you leave them a copy. So then when you come back in 10 days or 14 days with a lagoon style pool that you talked about, and they say, well, we think we want a rectangular pool. Well, that throws the whole thing out of whack. It causes a domino effect of revisions. And then you can legitimately say, okay, I did what you asked me to do. If it's not going to take much time to whip together something quick, be reasonable, don't gouge people and take advantage of them. However, if you see 3, 4, 5 hours of design, that's where you need to talk about it. So a good design agreement contract is very, very important to lay out the expectations, be transparent about it. And it needs to say in that blurb, if I'm charging $100 an hour, revisions are $125 an hour or $150 an hour. And then this goes into one of the questions we're going to talk about. Then it gets people out of all the nitpicking of, well, I want 5 of these instead of 3. And can we, it cuts that off pretty quick when people know. It's like when somebody needs to find their survey. Oh, I can't find it. All right, well, your design's going to cost $250 more because I have to reinvent the wheel. And they say, oh, well, I think it's in my office. I'll go look. And then they miraculously find it. So.
Great advice, Patrick. Yeah, I mean, I love the whole organization that you have with your spreadsheet. No wonder you don't miss a bill to send to us, right? Every Friday.
And you pay so fast too. I wish I did more. You guys are great customers.
Moving on. The next question is, it's actually quite a lengthy question. I'm just going to break it into a few parts. Somebody's asking, what are the steps of your design process? How many on-site meetings do you have? And let me ask you one other question because it's kind of tied in. Do you send your initial design concept via email or do you always meet again in person? So maybe Patrick, because you're already talking, maybe we can have you carry on that conversation and then we'll sort of touch on with other panelists as well.
Well, I don't do site visits anymore. So I would really be relating this to my process. But I can kind of relate it to one of my clients who's really, I do most of my work, and her process, which I agree with, she goes out to the site once, she gets all the information. She gets that to me and we create a concept plan for them. And they are paying for their designs. They're charging for their drawings. So it's not as bad to send them a concept. Actually, let me start like if I was doing it right now, here's what I would do. First of all, before I would go out to the site, they would know that I'm charging for a design, and I would probably start charging to go to a site, like $100 a site visit or $150 or whatever. That cuts out a lot of tire kickers, as somebody was asking how you get rid of them. So charging for my visit, they know right away they're not getting a drawing unless they pay for it. They're going to pay for it up front. There's none of this 50% up front and 50%, because I got burned a few times when I was working in the industry with it. And it's the worst feeling in the world when you've worked all that time and then they don't pay. And then you have to answer to your boss why we're not getting paid. So then before I go to a site, if I can get enough information to make myself a good base sheet, I'll do that. And I do that for whoever wants them, or with our clients whenever we can get the information ahead of time. So then you can get it from Go Island's awesome. Near Map is awesome. It's not cheap, but it's incredible. Google Earth, everybody knows about that. If you can get yourself a good base sheet, take it with you, and then you're not sketching this grotesque 2-year-old sketch that you have no idea what it looks like when you get back. You're just filling in the blanks with measurements and kind of fixing things. So you meet with a one time, you get all the information, you don't go back and make another trip because you're killing all of your productivity. And then what I would do is send them a progress proof. It's a basic layout of what we're thinking about. It's a great pacifier for people. If you tell them 10 to 14 days, after 9 or 10 days, throw together a good concept plan. It pacifies them. They're part of the process. It reduces your revisions, and then make your final presentation. I don't know, this Zoom world now, you can do the final presentation right online if they're okay with it. If they want to do it kind of the old school or traditional way, go meet with them, get a deposit from them. If you're going to do it online, I would suggest have a way right away for them to make a deposit, whether you do a QuickBooks invoice or something. So if they're ready to go, say, okay, I'm going to send you an invoice right now for your $5,000, commitment or whatever. So these trips back and forth are such a waste. And if you can do some of the things I told you with the revision process.
I think there's another question, Patrick, just around that. They're asking if the initial design should be in 2D first, if there are going to be a lot of revisions that you anticipate, if that should be in 2D before we kind of move over to 3D.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's so much easier to change a 2D plan than it is a 3D plan. When you're grading a site in 3D and you've got to redo it, 2D black and white a little bit in the beginning, and then nail it with some color with, Dynascape color, not to plug the product, but that's what we're using here. So a little bit of black and white, and then just kill them with the color. And the color, don't send out final plans without color. You've got to do it. I mean, look at the plan behind us with the shadows and the color and everything. You don't have to explain much to somebody. You look at the black and white drawing in our background compared to the color. It's just night and day difference. So don't send black and white drawings out anymore.
Right. Thanks, Pat. Can we move on? Beth, would you have something to add to the question?
Yeah, I totally agree with Patrick about the consultation fee. Weed people out right at that consultation. I actually go quite high because I figure if they're not willing to pay my consultation fee, then they're not going to be paying my high rates for the design work. I have something different to add with the exception of Patrick is with my site visits. So that first visit, we just talk about their scope of work. I actually leave the site. I don't give them a price there and then. I find I used to undermine myself and question and, not give them a price that was fair to me. So I go back to the shop, think about it, think about how difficult this client is, because you know what? Client A and client B could have the exact same backyard, and client B could be complete nightmare and cost me a lot more time. So there's that, those clients that are a little abrasive and demanding. So that makes a difference on my quote. I send them a quote by email, they agree to it. And then if they sign back, good. And then I'll go and do a site visit on my own to do the measurements. I don't want them there. I want to be able to do my site analysis and do all my thinking and measuring on my own without somebody asking me 10 million questions. So I tell them that now. I used to, try to be sneakily get into their place without them being there. But now I actually tell them I'd prefer if you're not here so I can really concentrate on what I'm doing.
That's a good point. Really, like 10-second blurb. It might not be a bad idea to schedule appointments one day and then just have a site visit day, like on a Friday, and just hammer out all your measurements. So that could be another way of doing it. Yeah.
You've had time to, we have to use our subconscious mind. It's super powerful. So once you've walked away from the site and come back to it, knowing now what the scope of work is, it's amazing how many things come up as you're looking at the site too. So it's great to utilize that behind the brain working system too.
Anything that you'd like to add, Chris, to what Patrick and Beth mentioned?
I think what I'd add to that is, I guess I'd play a little bit of devil's advocate, not to do that, but looking at it. And again, I think it really comes back to the kind of design work that you're doing, or how your business is set up, and what kind of business that you are. So if you're doing just design, like if you're doing just design, then your workflow might be a little different, and your responsibilities might be different than, say, folks that might be in the webinar and they're in a design build kind of situation, which is what I really, my primary background is from design build. And sometimes you don't have time to go and make another scheduled stop. Sometimes you got to nail it, get it down, get the meeting done. We shake the hands, pet the dog, and go out there and knock out the as much of that drawing as you can. Sometimes even just sketching the drawing while it's in your mind, so that you can maybe go to the next appointment that you've got booked in, whatever, in 15-20 minutes, or and that may sound kind of crazy, but right now that is the state of the industry. I think that people in design build and design and anything within the trades, they can't go fast enough for people. And as part of that communication process of making sure that your clients are expecting you to do a certain thing when you're saying you're going to do it, and maintaining that integrity. It's not easy, and I'm not saying I get it right all the time, because I don't, but it's really important, I think, to try to develop that system. So if you don't really have that time, then maybe you need to think of some of the ways that are going to be time savers. And one I really like was where Patrick said, hey, have the base sheet ready before you go. And that could just be as simple as going on to Google or their Ilon or whatever program that you want. And from a Dynascape perspective, you're just importing that raster, and then you're doing just a quick overlay. You don't even have to necessarily use like the building tool. It could just be simple lines, get it really close. And even if you're not exactly sure where the door is, or this wall, or maybe it bumps out, that doesn't matter. I think the important part is get it on paper as close as you can, and then get out the door and keep going. And don't stop, because the moment you try to like dial in all those little tiny details, when you don't really know all the information, that's when you become extremely inefficient.
Great. That was amazing. Thanks, guys. That was a great detail and answers from all three of you guys. Thank you. One thing I have over here, one question. What do you say to those landscape designers and landscape architects who insist that hand-drawn plans connect better with the clients? So let me start with you, Beth. What would you like to say to that?
Okay, so we have to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So hand-drawn, are you sketching in front of the clients? That's awesome.
I think that's what they mean, yeah.
you know, that's an awesome skill to have. And I think everybody should use that muscle because it's fantastic to be able to, you know, talk their language and draw something out. But if you're talking drafting, let's get real here. You know, using a CAD program is the way to go now. And I am probably the best person to preach this because I probably wouldn't have been using Dynascape because I have a fine art background. I'm an artist and I was not, you know, looking for a CAD program. I kind of got thrown into Dynascape. But oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did because it just speeds up everything. Now in this digital age, I don't have to meet contractors. I can send PDFs to them. If they lose them, which just happened this week, I had a contractor that lost the drawing. I can send it over in 2 seconds and he's not waiting, you know, a couple of days to meet up again. So it's speed, it's efficiency, it's being able to convert a drawing quickly to another style of drawing from a planting plan to a lighting plan. Revisions. Oh my goodness. I used to cry when a client would say, could you just move this over, you know, 6 inches? You're like, no, I can't. Like, that's like a lot of work. Whereas now it's so easy. And the other thing that I love about it, because I'm an artist, I actually have my own symbols, you know, so I still have, you know, my personalized look of my designs because I brought them into Dynascape. So I really have the best of both worlds. So that's my answer.
Great. That's Patrick, would you like to add something to it?
I've never had anybody ask me to do a hand rendered drawing, so I'm not really sure who's asking those questions. I don't know. Well, I think that it possibly could come from the preconceived the assumption that a landscape plan is a confusing black and white type drawing like building plans are. And I think if, I don't know, if somebody were to ask me, can you do I really want a hand-drawn plan, first of all, I'd say we don't do those because they're not as efficient and it's going to cost you more money. But I'd show them a really nice colored Dynascape drawing and say, this is what I'm providing to you. This is even better because I can quickly make the changes for you. I can service you better with what you want. We can be more creative more quickly. And it's going to be a great experience. You can do it in the privacy of your home on your iPad. So I know you want this, but I'm going to do something even better that will make the experience even more, I don't know what the word is, pleasing, whatever that is. I think that's the way I would, no, I know it's the way I would answer it.
Okay. Chris, anything that you'd like to add?
You know, to the question, if somebody is already in that mode, if they're insisting that hand-drawn plans would connect better with a client, I would agree. Yeah, I would, of course, I'd say yes. Hand-drawn, flat out, looks great. It speaks to the artistic nature of what we're trying to convey with with the landscape. And I think that it absolutely does that, but it does not necessarily mean that it's relevant. It does not necessarily mean that it's what the client really needs. And it's not necessarily something that I think, I don't know if that's really the question that's being asked. I think when you get a question, if that question were to ever come up, like say, for those that are attending the webinar, if you're listening and you get someone that wants to ask that, or you have a client that says, well, can't you just hand draw it? Isn't that better and more, this not as, robotic as that CAD stuff or whatever, and I don't think we're going to really see that, but there is probably a certain clientele that would maybe beg to differ. And I'm going to say that there's a time and a place for all things. And I think hand rendering can still be possible. And I think but it's not necessarily with creating drawings for the use of building something. It's not necessarily, we're not in the days where we have to have technical drafting. That's not necessarily what we're doing. CAD allows us to have precision and it allows us to have efficiency. that is the most important thing to speak, lining up with everything everybody else said. I totally agree with that too. And when we think about artistic and creative expression, how we choose to put that into our drawings using thinking through Dynascape and other, there's all kinds of programs out there, but Dynascape of course allows us to have our own creative expression, which I think is wonderful. Making your own figures like Beth does, or hand drawing something and then importing that into the design as maybe a small sketch. And I know that there are designers that are absolutely fantastic at what they do, and they actually hybridize things and they'll hand draw on top of Dynascape. So it really comes back to what it is that is in your mix and how you want to convey that to your clients.
Great. Thank you so much. There are a couple of other questions. By the way, I did want to say to the audience, if you guys have any specific questions, you can always use the chat box as well. And we'll try to get to those questions as much as we can. The panelists can potentially answer them as well. If we cannot get to your questions, we'll make sure that we reach out to you individually. So like I said, the other two questions are around the rate and like charging for landscape design, etc. But I do want to, there's an interesting question around, do you see any emerging trends with the style of designs being asked for? Maybe Chris, you can touch on that.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing a lot more linear style design work. Obviously, if you think about like what architecture is pretty exciting right now, there's a lot of linear contemporary design. So mid-century modern obviously is getting a big resurgence in popularity. So that really speaks towards a lot more of those that I guess linear or kind of look. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, which means more maybe hedgerows and layerings that way. But that doesn't all just means that everything has to be all boxed in. I think that it does allow for breaking out into fun ways to inlay different kinds of materials together. I think that just from a hardscape perspective, there are some really, really great hardscape companies, and I'm not even going to go there because that's another whole weedy thing. I don't want to get into this, that, or the other thing. But it doesn't. I don't think you have to go very far through social media or anything to figure out that there's a lot of great combinations of hardscapes that you can put together, and that availability now is so great. And so seeing those combinations of hardscapes put together in ways that are very unique in kind of a linear fashion, I think that's a pretty growing trend, and it's definitely not going anywhere, especially as we're into this COVID era where everybody's kind of staying home and chilling that way.
Pat, would you like to add something to it?
I think he said it pretty well. I mean, it's been hard to really see a lot of trend stuff without us being able to go to these trade shows and look at products and just see what's out there. So it'll be really nice to be able to get back to these and rub shoulders with people and see really what they're doing. For what I'm doing, nothing's really changed. It's just, and for me, I just work with such a wide variety of people in different areas that it's all over the place for me. So nothing's really changed since I started.
Beth, anything that you'd like to add?
I always kind of cringe at that whole thing what's the trend, because my whole mode of operation is to always try to take the architecture and make the landscape architecture look like they were built at the same time. I try to create timeless gardens that you can't tell, oh, that was built in the 80s and that was built in the 90s. I want to go to a garden and say, oh, you're kidding me, that's 50 years old. Like it looks like it was built yesterday. So I always kind of cringe at that whole trend thing, but I think, trends, I would like to think more like, being environmentally responsible, our carbon footprint, sustainability. I think that's what we should be thinking about is trends. And we just actually totally revamped our awards of excellence at Landscape Ontario based on that, because we want to award designers and contractors to be building responsibly. So that's where I think the trend is really.
Okay. That's great. Thanks very much. Another question I have is, what do you think the biggest challenge the next generation of landscape designers will face? Beth, while we're speaking to you, do you have anything that you can add to that?
I don't even think the future. Right now, I am in such challenge with COVID and supply and demand. Like our materials have been I've actually turned away so much work this year because of not being able to supply properly the way I want to be able to supply my designs. And so I think labor is always going to be a real super challenge, skilled labor.
Yeah.
Because the millennials, I can talk about this because it's my child, my children, none of them want to do physical labor. They just don't want to do that. So we're losing our skilled labor. And right here, right now, I don't even have to think of the future, is securing products, especially plants.
Got it. Anything you'd like to add to it, Chris?
Yeah, I thought about, I was thinking about this, and I think that it's going to be a challenge to be relevant in an age of influence. And what I mean by that is that, I think it's kind of a big deal right now. There's a lot of people that think a viral video is just going to make them a knowledgeable and competent designer or contractor. Well, it might be true, but at the end of the day, people are still hiring us to solve their problems, and being willing to just slog through something, get your hands dirty, or work those long hours and fix issues and continue to do that over a consistent basis will pave the way to success. And I think that sometimes it's really easy to lose that. There's so much distraction out there is really what I'm getting. And that's going to grow and grow and grow as time goes on. And the next generation is, I want to go to this store. What's this trend, or this shiny object over here? And I think trying to be consistent and disciplined with what you're doing is going to help keep that at bay and allow you to continue to be successful, or to allow you to be successful, and then continue that going forward. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that's something to consider.
I would just say, before we think about the challenges, think about the possibilities right now. I'm getting a lot of inquiries to design for landscape companies because they say they can't find landscape designers, which I'm wondering where are all of the landscape designers, So I think what they said was right, but I would think positively that this is a very open door to, and I'll piggyback, you can make a nice living off of this. You can hire people that you find are good and competent and know construction and design underneath you, and that's how you start making more money. But the challenges I see for most designers isn't what's coming in the future. It's what they're not doing right now, which is what we just talked about with tracking time and running an efficient business. And a lot of people start into this doing what Beth and I do, and Chris, and within a year they get absorbed back into companies because they realize it's not a hobby. You have to track jobs. It's very similar. If I think the reason why I don't want to say I'm good at this, why I'm successful at this, was because I learned how to run a design build division where I had to track all the things. And then I implement all of those things that I had to do into my own business. And so pulling all the levers and moving things around and tracking and billing, and I like it more than designing. So that's the challenge for most designers, is learning how to manage an efficient design business where you're not working 40 hours a week on a job that you charged $500 for because you're out of whack with your tracking and everything else. So
Yeah, you mentioned that, you know, it's currently, of course, there's a lot of business and less landscape designers. There's a question around here that maybe Patrick will suit you. Are there any remote design jobs that people can transition to after working in the field? Interested in careers that like that for staying at home with family. So can you like maybe chat about that a bit?
Yeah.
Kind of ties to what you were saying before.
One of the things I pray about a lot is I wish I could find more people to help me. And it's not because I want to make more money. It's because I want to give people what I have and what a couple of my other designers have, where they've been able to quit their jobs, work from home, go on field trips with their daughter, and go on a sailboat and all those kinds of things. So I talked myself into a corner here, but I think there's tons of opportunity to do this. So landscape design, just like I said,
yeah,
the industry needs landscape designers. The industry needs good people like Chris to go take pictures of jobs. I mean, I could hire somebody to just do takeoffs and help estimating for landscape companies right now. I don't want to do it because it takes a lot of construction experience, and it's not easy to find good designers who know all the nuts and bolts. So there's a ton of opportunity. The hardest part is what I always, I kind of teamed up with Dynascape to do webinars and all that stuff. And there's been a lot of fruit from that for me. If I didn't have that, who knows where I'd be? I mean, I had some good relationships, but I think the hardest part is getting your name out there and getting in front of people and establishing a client base. So that can be hard, but starting a design business, it's like $800 to do an LLC and you're off and running, and get a website for not much. So
yeah. It's great.
It's the greatest thing in the world to do. I wish more people would jump into it, and just making less money is having more freedom is it's worth the sacrifice.
Beth, I know you raised your hand.
Yeah. So, I mean, Patrick brought up so many great points here. You know, if you are starting out, a lot of times your first clients are going to be your friends or your family. And, you know, I think we're reluctant to charge them, but I encourage you to charge them, because I'll use the example of my cousin. My cousin, when I was a newbie, I did a design for them, didn't charge them. Did they do the project? No. I don't even know where the design went. The next time they called me, I said, listen, you're calling me in May. Like, this is my time. I'm going to have to charge you. And they're like, no problem. So I charged them. They did the whole project. And so there was value attached to it. So if you are starting out working with friends and family, charge them. Maybe you give them a discount, you know, you're going to get the friends and family discount, but you're going to charge them. The other thing about time that Patrick talked about, put what you want, like, so if you don't want to work weekends, or you only want to work 2 nights a week seeing clients, set that up, because if you just let it go, you're going to be run ragged. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to have family time. And, so you do need to set your own parameters. And I actually had my son while I was working, and my husband actually took the paternity leave. But it was nice because I just set up how many clients I wanted to see. I didn't have to do, my crazy 80-hour weeks that I used to do before baby. I was able to scale down, and you don't have to tell anybody, I'm scaling back. It's like, I'm booked for 3 months. Yeah. You don't have to tell them you're only working 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week. So you can carve out whatever time. And if you're starting as a new designer, it might be a part-time job, that you allot 10, 15 hours a week to, that you can build up your reputation, build up your portfolio, get Chris to come and take some wonderful pictures of your work, and you're off to the races. And the next thing you know, you're working full-time.
Yeah, I know we've got 10 minutes to go, and I also want to jump to some of the Q&A that we've been getting on online. I have one question, Patrick, for you. Someone has asked, what's your process like for evaluating a property and translating that to estimate hours for quoting, design, pricing?
I approach it just like you do when you go to a site and they're asking you to do 4 different work areas, a front walkway, front planting, blah, blah, blah. So in my head, if it's a bigger project, I'll write notes down, and so if it's a design and 3D modeling project, I'm gonna break it into a few pieces, and this is maybe good for you to write down. So one, you need to figure out how long it's going to take you to create the base sheet for this based on the information you're given. So when somebody says, what's this going to cost? Here's some pictures. You need to say, I'm not giving you an estimate until I can see what kind of site information I'm going to get. Because if you get a good base sheet, you can whip those together pretty quick. If you get a mess, you can spend more time making a base sheet than doing the actual drawing, and it happens. So number one is, how long is the base sheet going to take me? Number two, how long do I think this design is going to take me? Now, if you want to break it down into smaller chunks, like, if you track things like a pool patio normally takes me 2 to 3 hours. If a front walkway usually takes me 45 minutes. You can do that. That would be really cool if you had the time to even track down to that. Base sheet, concept plan, revisions, you should figure, if you're doing your job right, you've got 5 to 10% in revisions. And then how long it's going to take to get it colored, cleaned up, and out the door. And then takeoffs usually don't take a long time. So, I mean, when you've done it a long time, you can just look at something. And I always figure by the 8-hour increment, really. I mean, if I get something in, I'll say, how many days is it going to take me? It's going to take me 8 hours or 12, or it's just how my brain kind of works. And you always kind of cushion yourself a little bit, and just approach it like you would any other job, but be clear with people. This is what I'm giving you for this price, and write it down so you don't get caught playing catch up with that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. To me, yeah. I hope it answers for the person who asked as well. Beth, would you like to add something to it, or Chris?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. What I do is I figure out how many hours, like Patrick does, charge it by my hourly fee, and then I add 40% on top of that, because we forget about our overhead, our cost of our vehicle, all our insurance, all the things that we have to pay on top of it. Somebody's got to pay for that. So I add 40%. And don't forget, if you are design only and you're working with contractors to get quotes for your clients, to put that time in there too, because that can really add up to the end of the day.
It just has, I've got some quick fire questions that, like I said, before I jump on to some of the Q&A that we've got. So someone is asking, what computer is your daily driver for getting your work done? I'll have
I could talk about this stuff all day long.
That's made up Patrick's alley.
Can we just do a computer webinar? All right. The 2 best computers that I've ever used are Surface devices and Dell XPS machines. Surface device, like I'm on a Surface Studio right now. You can see how perfectly clear my camera is. It's the best camera out there. So Surface devices are awesome. They can take pen input. The screens are absolutely beautiful. There's many different form factors. But if you didn't want to do that, I think pound for pound, Dell XPS 15 and 17s are the best machines to get. And this is another thing to write down too, because the laptop industry is changing really quickly as far as screens. So traditional screens are 16:9 aspect ratio, which were taken on years ago because they're good for watching movies, but they're not the best for doing things like design. So now MacBook, all of Apple's products are 16:10, which means the screen isn't as wide, it's a little bit higher. Surface devices are all 3:2. They're even higher. And it's incredible how much more you can see on a screen with a 16:10 and a 3x2. So XPS 17 is a killer machine. 15 screens are beautiful. And here's another thing. Color accuracy is really important.
Yeah.
You know, when you're using an old computer and the colors are all out of whack, or the sRGB stuff's not accurate, you're sending drawings out that look one way on your screen, and they can look something else to somebody else. So I could have a nice yellow on a bad screen, but it looks like mustard to somebody else because my screen is not calibrated right. And you know, what's wonderful about design and color is they're really not resource hogs. I mean, this Surface Studio I'm on right now is the cheapest base models. I got it on eBay for $1,400. They're like $2,500 new. I do every single thing I need to do other than rendering with 8 gigs of RAM and an i5 processor. And it's like 5-year-old technology, but it's awesome. So XPS and Surface devices, bar none.
What do you guys use? You guys use Beth and Chris?
Yeah, I have a Surface Pro too, and I'm on my second one. I gave my mom my old one. It was nothing wrong with it. I just felt bad for my mom using some archaic things. So I too love the Surface Pro. It's been great, but I didn't know all the technical reasons why I liked it. Thanks, Patrick, for saying that.
Welcome.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm also in the Surface Club.
There you go.
For designing, I use Surface Book. I like that just because it seems to be a really stable platform, and it really handles the program pretty well, and you know, does all the other things that I need to do for all my. It's a little weird. I use different computers for different things. I use a MacBook Pro and a lot of the Mac suite for a lot of my photo work and so forth. But then as far as when it comes to anything really to do with like design work, that'll stay with the Surface product.
The benefits of the Surface products, you can create yourself a black and white base sheet, and then you can do a nice concept on it with the Surface pen and the inking, and whip together out a concept for somebody. And I do that a ton. When my designers send something to me, I can mark it up quickly with that. So it really is, it's really nice. So
Patrick, maybe you should ask for some royalty from Microsoft, because clearly you're doing a great job selling it. So
well, I have gone to a few of the big presentations in New York. I get to go to those. So I'm not saying it because I get to go, but I believe in it.
We've got just a couple of minutes left, and some of the questions we've got in the Q&A box, we will come to them. We will personally reach out to you and address some of those questions. So I apologize if we were not able to get there. One last question before we end this is, what is your favorite low maintenance shrub? What are your favorite low maintenance shrubs?
I burn them.
I think if you had a client, like I've had some commercial clients that I know they're never going to trim it. They're never going to do anything to it. You want a Miscellatus, burning bush.
Okay.
You really don't have to trim it.
I don't know if I have one. The first thing that came to my mind was a boulder, but that's not a plant. But you know what? When you're doing what I'm doing all over the country, low maintenance shrubs doesn't mean anything, because like somebody in Delaware here, something is low maintenance, it's not somewhere else, and it doesn't work. Yeah, so it's hard. I like Itea though, and I don't know why, because it sends all these weedy shoots up from the bottom. But I just love the variety of the red foliage and the flower, the whatevers. So, and the form.
Guys, we're almost at time. Thank you so much. I do want to thank each one of you guys for providing such like amazing information for our audience. I will say for the audience, you will be getting an email with a recording. For people who are not able to join, they will get the recording. We're also doing a little promotion for people who attended, which will get in an email as well. So please look out and watch out for that email. But thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your presence. We look forward to doing another webinar very shortly, so look out for that as well. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Bye.